A single punch echoed across the crowded charity sports arena, and for one frozen heartbeat, everyone believed they had just witnessed another rich young man humiliating an ordinary father. But before the applause from his entitled friends could even begin, 12 United States Marines who had quietly been sitting among the crowd rose to their feet at exactly the same moment. Their chairs scraped against the concrete in perfect unison. Every conversation stopped. Every phone lowered. Every smile vanished. Because the man lying on the ground was not weak, forgotten, or alone. He was someone they had crossed an entire country to honor, and the billionaire's son had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is greater than revenge, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. Garrett Holloway had never wanted sympathy. At 38 years old, he knew exactly how quickly life could erase everything a person had worked for. 5 years earlier he had been serving alongside the Marines, respected by every member of his unit, until an explosion during a rescue operation permanently injured his shoulder and ended his military career. Returning home had been harder than any battlefield. His wife passed away after a sudden illness less than 2 years later, leaving him to raise his 8-year-old daughter, Nora, alone. Medical bills consumed nearly every dollar he had saved. His small home needed repairs he could not afford. Every morning he worked as a maintenance technician at a local recreation center before picking up extra weekend jobs wherever he could find them. He never complained because every evening he still came home to the one person who believed he could do anything. Nora adored her father with the innocent confidence only children possess. She never noticed the patched shoes, the aging pickup truck, or the quiet sacrifices Garrett made so she could continue taking art classes. To her, he was simply the strongest man alive. He packed her lunches with handwritten notes, attended every school event, and always reminded her that true wealth could never be measured by a bank account. That Saturday morning, father and daughter attended a charity youth athletics festival organized to raise money for families of injured first responders and veterans. Garrett had volunteered weeks earlier to help repair damaged equipment before the event. Since volunteers received free admission, he decided to bring Nora as a surprise. She spent the entire drive smiling out the window, excited to watch races, games, and community performances under the bright summer sun. The event attracted local leaders, business executives, reporters, veterans, and hundreds of families. One of the featured sponsors was Hollowridge Industries, owned by billionaire investor Preston Hollowridge. Preston rarely appeared in public without attracting cameras, and this day was no different. Standing beside him was his 23-year-old son, Bryce, who had spent his entire life believing money solved every problem before it even existed. Bryce enjoyed attention more than generosity. Expensive watches, luxury cars, designer clothes, and social media fame had convinced him that admiration came automatically with wealth. His father quietly worried that success had reached Bryce before maturity ever had. Garrett paid little attention to celebrities or executives. He spent most of the morning helping volunteers carry tables, fix broken tents, and direct elderly guests toward shaded seating. Nora wandered nearby sketching smiling families in her notebook. Late that morning, a gust of wind knocked over an expensive display promoting Hollowridge Industries. Several decorative metal panels crashed onto the walkway. Garrett instinctively rushed forward to stop one panel from striking 2 children. He caught the heavy frame with his injured shoulder, grimacing from the sudden pain. At nearly the same moment, Bryce approached with several friends. Seeing Garrett holding one of the damaged panels, Bryce instantly assumed the maintenance worker had caused the accident. Without asking a single question, Bryce marched toward Garrett with the confidence of someone who had never expected consequences. The crowd watched in uncomfortable silence as Bryce mocked Garrett's worn clothes, questioned his competence, and accused him of ruining a $1 million display. Garrett remained calm despite the embarrassment because Nora stood only a few yards away. He quietly tried to explain that the wind had knocked everything over and that he had actually prevented children from being injured. Bryce never listened. Consumed by pride and eager to impress the cameras surrounding the event, he shoved Garrett backward. Garrett regained his balance without responding, instead of walking away. Bryce stepped forward again, then came the punch. It landed across Garrett's face, with enough force to send him to one knee. Nora screamed and rushed toward her father, tears streaming down her cheeks. The entire arena froze. Before security could react, 12 men seated in different sections of the audience stood together. None of them shouted, none of them ran, they simply walked. Every step carried discipline learned over decades, every face carried quiet determination. People instinctively moved aside. Within seconds they surrounded Garrett, not as bodyguards protecting a celebrity, but as brothers protecting family. The oldest among them, a gray-haired Marine named Colton Mercer, gently helped Garrett to his feet before carefully brushing dust from his shirt. Another Marine comforted Nora while making sure she could still see her father. The remaining Marines formed a respectful circle, their calm presence speaking louder than anger ever could. The spectators whispered in confusion, who was this ordinary maintenance worker? Why would 12 decorated Marines immediately stand for him? Colton finally faced Bryce, not with rage but with heartbreaking disappointment. He explained that Garrett had once volunteered to remain behind during a dangerous evacuation so wounded Marines could escape first. Though officially retired after severe injuries, Garrett had repeatedly refused recognition because he believed every member of the team deserved equal credit. The men surrounding him had survived because Garrett chose responsibility over personal safety. Years later, they still gathered every summer to honor the friend who had saved their lives. Today's charity event was their reunion. None of them had expected to witness someone striking the man they all considered a hero. Silence spread through the arena. Reporters who moments earlier focused on the Billionaire family suddenly pointed every camera toward Garrett. Preston Holleridge's expression changed completely. For the first time that day he looked directly into Garrett's eyes instead of at his clothing. Then he noticed something else. Garrett had never once accused Bryce, never demanded revenge, never insulted anyone. He was simply checking whether Nora had been frightened. That single moment revealed more character than 1,000 speeches ever could. Preston slowly walked toward Garrett. His voice carried genuine regret as he apologized for what had happened under his company's sponsorship. He admitted that success meant nothing if it produced arrogance instead of integrity. Bryce stood speechless. He had expected applause. Instead he found himself surrounded by disappointed faces. His own friends quietly stepped away. The cameras that once celebrated him now captured the shame written across his expression. Garrett accepted Preston's apology immediately. He explained that children often learn by watching adults, and today's lesson would matter more if everyone chose understanding instead of hatred. Those words struck Bryce harder than any punch ever could. For the first time in years, nobody feared disappointing him. Instead, he feared disappointing himself. As the event resumed, organizers invited Garrett onto the main stage to recognize his years of community service. He resisted at first, but Nora squeezed his hand with quiet encouragement. Standing beneath the bright afternoon sun, Garrett looked uncomfortable in front of the applause. He spoke only briefly. He reminded everyone that heroes existed everywhere. Teachers who stayed late helping struggling students, nurses comforting frightened patients, parents working 2 jobs so their children could dream bigger, neighbors quietly checking on elderly families. Real courage, he said, rarely appeared on television. Because it usually happened when nobody was watching. The audience rose for a standing ovation that lasted nearly 2 full minutes. Even reporters wiped tears from their eyes. Bryce watched every second. For the first time he understood that respect could never be purchased. It had to be earned through humility. The following week Bryce requested a private meeting with Garrett. Many assumed Garrett would refuse. Instead he welcomed him into the small recreation center where he repaired equipment every morning. Bryce arrived without luxury cars, photographers, or expensive clothes. He apologized without excuses. He admitted that he had judged an entire human being by worn boots and faded jeans. He confessed that although he possessed every financial advantage imaginable, he had never learned the value of genuine character. Garrett listened patiently. He accepted the apology because carrying bitterness would only burden his own heart, but forgiveness did not erase responsibility. Garrett challenged Bryce to spend the next 6 months volunteering every weekend with families of injured veterans instead of writing a donation check. Money could build buildings, only compassion could build people. Bryce accepted. Those weekends slowly transformed him. He repaired homes beside construction crews. He served meals. He pushed wheelchairs. He listened to stories from military families who had sacrificed everything. For the first time, wealth stopped defining his identity, service did. Preston watched his son's transformation with quiet gratitude. He later established scholarships honoring single parents raising children after military service, insisting Garrett help design the program. Garrett initially resisted public recognition once again. Eventually he agreed on one condition: every scholarship would celebrate resilience instead of tragedy, recipients would be recognized for hope, perseverance, and determination rather than pity. Years later, hundreds of families benefited from those scholarships. Nora grew into a talented artist whose paintings often captured ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness. One of her most famous paintings showed 12 Marines standing behind a single father while sunlight poured across an open field. She titled it, "Strength Stands Together." Visitors often asked whether the painting represented military bravery. She always smiled and explained that it represented loyalty, gratitude, and the kind of love that never disappears after the uniform comes off. Before we reach the end of this journey, I would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us whether you believe forgiveness is harder than revenge, or share a moment when someone stood beside you during your most difficult day. As another bright afternoon drew to a close, Garrett and Nora walked slowly toward their old pickup truck. It looked exactly the same as it always had, but somehow everything felt different. Not because Garrett had become famous, richer, or more celebrated, but because the world had finally witnessed what his daughter had known all along. Greatness is not measured by power, money, expensive clothing, or family names. It is measured by the quiet choices made when no reward is guaranteed. Bryce had learned that a single reckless moment could damage a reputation, but one sincere decision to change could begin restoring a life. The 12 Marines returned home carrying the same loyalty they had always carried, proud not because they had intimidated anyone, but because they had honored the man who once stood for them. And Garrett continued living exactly as before, fixing broken things, raising his daughter with unconditional love, and proving every single day that the strongest people are often the ones who never feel the need to prove their strength. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that kindness is never weakness, humility is never failure, forgiveness is never surrender, and sometimes the greatest victory belongs to the person who chooses compassion when the world expects revenge.